Strange noises and other situations may be a part of this video because we will never be alone again while filming. Hello beautiful bookworms, my name is Katrina and welcome to my channel, and today I am going to be doing my March wrap-up because you guessed it, I read books in March and it's time to tell you what I did read. So in this one I sort of cheated a little bit because I also put a book that I only finished on April 3rd, but since this video will come out after April 3rd and I read pretty much the majority of the book before that, we will say that I finished it in March and I will wrap it up and we won't never have to talk about it again. I'm joking, if you want to talk about that, I like the book, so it's fine. But the rest of the books, apart from that, I actually did read in March and finished in March, and so, without further ado, we will wrap this up. So I read one comic issue, 2 full books, and one of them is really a full book, and 13 mangas. And yes, you heard me correctly, 13 mangas during the month of March. So I will start with the comic issue, then I will go through the books, and then I will go to the mangas since they are the major proportion of things that I read in March. So the comic issue that I read in March is part of the comic issues that I've been reading each and every month. If you've been watching my wrap-ups for a while now, I have been getting each month Ruby, and this is a comic issue. This is about Ruby, and these girls that are part of this team, and they sort of hunt monsters. So they're hunters and huntresses and they hunt monsters, and this is based on an animation that I really enjoy, Ruby. And as I normally say, I do advise you to watch the animation before reading the comics, but I'm having a lot of fun reading this. I will probably won't read any of these in April since I'm quarantined and I'm not receiving my comics of the month, but yeah, I am really enjoying them, and this is issue 5, and I really like the cover arts, and I really like the art in the inside, and the little side stories that we get, and so it was very nice to read. Then going to the books, the first book that I'm going to show you is indeed the one that I finished in April, but that we are going to pretend that I finished in March, and that is Ghoul, and this is by Dacre Stoker and G.D. Barker. And I buddy read this with one of my subscribers, Maria João, and I really wanted to leave down below the link to her Instagram because she has a lot of pretty pictures with books and I really enjoy what she has to say about them. She does some reviews there and she's really sympathetic and she's a really nice person. I really love when she comments on my videos and I really enjoyed reading this. She actually finished this before me and so she had to wait for me because I don't know, I was sleeping on this, I guess. But I really enjoyed trading some of the things that we thought about the book and I really enjoyed talking to her and I hope that we can continue to maybe buddy read or maybe just talk about the books that we read. I don't know, I really enjoyed talking to her. So Ghoul is sort of like the origin story of the Dracula book. And this is basically the origin of the legend and the monster of Dracula. And basically, Dacre Stoker, I do believe that he's like the great nephew of Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. And supposedly in this book, we see the story of Bram Stoker and his family, and he is hunted by vampires. And so he's actually meeting the supposed Dracula of whom he wrote about. So we sort of are told that Dracula is a real monster and a real character in a real world. And it's very fun because it has a lot of things that supposedly really happen with Bram Stoker and his family, but then you see that it has a lot of paranormal that supposedly isn't real. And the idea is that you can't see the real from the fake and that you will always be wondering if vampires do exist or not, and if Dracula is really based on a true story that happened with Bram Stoker's family or not. Obviously, I really don't believe that, but it was really fun to read, and it had some creepy moments, specifically with the descriptions of the vampires, because I really love this sort of vampires, which aren't the real shiny ones. These are the real nitty-gritty, cruel, and just visceral vampires, and I really enjoy that paranormal sort of creatures. And so I really enjoy this. This is a little bit gory. It doesn't save on the details of death and blood and situations, but I don't think it's a very horrifying book. So I think that if you enjoy paranormal and if you like the vampire myth and the vampire lore, you will have a lot of fun with this. And if you've read Dracula by Bram Stoker, you will get some of the scenes, you will get some of the characters, and you will see the inspirations between the stuff. It was very interesting. I really enjoyed it. And the book itself is really beautiful, so it's a plus. I have too much hair on my face, Jesus. And the second book that I read, which was actually a book that I finished in March but didn't start in March, I think I started in February or something, is The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. This is a behemoth of a beast, and it took me 2 months to finish, which is not really normal if you know me and my reading schedules. I can read a lot and I can read very, very fast, but with this monster, it was impossible. And I'm not saying this because I hated this book. Actually, I absolutely loved it, even though it did have a lot of different reactions for me throughout the book, but it was a very, very interesting book to actually get to understand. So even though this only has 832 pages, and I say only because I've read bigger in less time, this has this sort of writing, which is incredibly small. And so it costs more to read and it has more writing per page. And also, it's not an easy book to understand. This is a classic book. It's a Nobel Prize winner, author, and basically this is the story of this dude. And this dude has my age, I believe, when he begins the story, so 23, 24. And he is advised by his doctor that he should maybe go to this cure house that is in the middle of the mountains before he starts to really work as an engineer and to provide for himself. And he goes there because his cousin is also there committed, since his cousin appears to have some sort of problem with his lungs. And so he goes as a visit to stay for 3 weeks. He ends up staying there for 7 freaking years. And this is the story of how he stood there for 7 years. So basically, apart from that, this book does have a narrator, and the narrator isn't our main character. The narrator is a narrator that is actually telling us, I am telling you the story of Hans Castorp, which is our main character. And you would say that this premise is boring, and you would probably be right, but it really isn't, because it's actually a social criticism enveloped in the story of this young dude that just goes to do this cure and stays there forever. So in this book, Thomas Mann basically tells you that society is not really ill at all. They just believe themselves to be ill, and so as they believe themselves to be, they are, because it's a thing that happens that I don't really know the translation for, but that you actually understand when you take a psychology course, is then when you started believing in stuff. Sometimes you have psychosomatic situations that actually allow you to confirm your hypothesis. And so if you believe that you're ill, you will start developing things that could be understood as symptoms, but they aren't real. They're sort of a placebo sort of symptoms. And in this case, the being ill is sort of a hierarchy in this mountain. So if you are the most ill and you are there the most time, even if your illness is not really an illness, you have status. So this is sort of a small society inside of a cure asylum in the mountains. And I had one of the best experiences reading this. It was very slow because sometimes they did considerations about time, about politics, about religion, about society by itself, and it took me some time to understand it and to properly reflect on the considerations. So it's not an easy book to just breeze through it. You have to actually think about what you're reading, because everything has a second meaning if you apply it to the actual society. This book was firstly published in 1924, I believe, and I do believe that is a criticism to the 20th society. However, it can apply to the actual society that we live in today. And I've seen a lot of things that when I think about it, I see in the groups that I frequent, in people in faculty, in the university, in people with whom I live, in friends groups, in groups where I have to be inserted in, religions and politics and all of the situation. And so I feel like it's a very actual book, a very today sort of reading, and it's very interesting if you want to delve a little bit more in classics that can apply to today's, not today specifically with this quarantine and this situation, but today, you know, the today mentality and situation. So it was a very dense read, and sometimes I got very aggravated because I got a little bit upset with all of the characters because they talked and felt and said things that for me were extremely stupid. And I was like, why are you doing this? What do you want? What are you doing? But at the same time, some of the things you could laugh about, some of the things you got very annoyed by. I got moments where I got so annoyed with this book that I really just wanted to close it and say, why am I reading this? But then I wanted to know what happened, and I wanted to know Thomas Mann's perspective on stuff, and so I kept on reading and stopped coming out. Oh. And all in all, it was a very, very interesting classic to read, and I do recommend to people that actually like to spend a lot of time reading a very, very dense book and that enjoy to see social criticism, because that's basically what you're going to get here. You do get a story, but it's not very cohesive. Okay. Die somewhere. Sorry. It's not very cohesive, you have a lot of leaps through time, and I think that that is also supposed to be like that, because you're not supposed to understand how many years have passed, because your main character does not give a damn how many years have passed. He's just there, and he reaches into the state which people normally do, which is when he accommodates to the fact of being in the mountain. And so everything for him in the mountain is normal, and not moving is normal, and just being there and seeing the time pass by is normal, and the life outside of it is not normal. He actually starts to use sort of the we pronoun, so like, we know how to live here, we are used to this, and it's very creepy for people that come on the outside, like, you're your own person. Stop saying we, because you are not everyone that's in here. And it's very interesting how everyone has sort of personality trait that it's not very good, and they actually extrapolate to that because of the fact that they are physically ill. They also have traits of personality that are considered not good. And of course, you could say that's the other way around, because they have those traits of personality, they are actually ill, supposedly. So all in all, it's a really interesting book. I won't be able to recommend it to everyone, because if you like fast-paced books, definitely it's not for you. And if you like books with a specific sort of narrative story, it's not really for you. But if you like to lose yourself a bit in a book, and if you like to read more society-applied stuff, this is your book. It's very, very interesting. And don't forget, it's a Nobel Prize wizard. So, did I say wizard? I meant Nobel Prize winner. I need to drink some water because clearly I can talk. And now we're going to the manga that I've read this month. So this month I have read 3 Tokyo Ghoul mangas, and those were the 13, 14, and 15. This is by Suishida, and as you probably know, I've been doing the Tokyo Ghoul collection right there. And these are the last one that came out of Tokyo Ghoul. It's not still finished, and this is obviously the second season. So we have 13, we have 14, and we have 15, which, why is it pink? I don't know. I hate it. Let's not talk about it. So I won't take too much of your time with this. You've heard me talk about Tokyo Ghoul forever. Tokyo Ghoul, the main and first series, is about this kid. He lives in a world where ghouls exist, and ghouls are basically monsters that look like humans but feed on humans. But through an accident, he ends up being half ghoul, half human, and he does understand that maybe ghouls aren't the monsters after all, and humans are. And so it's sort of a fight to understand who's the biggest monster of them all, who has the right to live, what is surviving, what is love, what is understanding. And it does have a little bit of a sci-fi-ish sort of tone to it, especially Tokyo Ghoul Re, the sequel, since you understand a lot about the scientifics of how a ghoul is born and lives, because they have specific types of cells, they have specific types of parts of bodies and things that grow in them and with them. And so if you don't like that sort of specific scientific things, maybe the second half is not for you, but the first series is just really amazing. Of course, it's also very, very gory and it has a lot of trigger warnings, so I don't recommend to people that actually don't like to see blood and disembowelments on page because it's not pretty. It has one of the best arts that I've ever seen for manga. It's not the best, but I really, really enjoy it. And in what regards action sequences, I do think that Suihishida is a master because you can actually see your pages moving while you're reading, and that's so freaking interesting because normally you just see movements implied, and in here you actually see the actual movements before they are printed in the page. And I really think that that's an art, and I really enjoy reading Tokyo Ghoul. So yeah, I'm eagerly waiting for the 16th volume, which I don't know when will come and when I will have it. Let's not talk about that. And then I did a thing, which, yeah, I'm crazy. But I read the 10 volumes of Happiness, the manga series. And this manga series is by Shuzo Oshimi, and wait a second. Okay, I put them down. Okay, so showing you the first one, Happiness by Shuzo Oshimi. So this manga series I already had read from 1 to 9, but then 10 came along and it was the final and last volume of Happiness. And I was loving this so much, and people were saying like, I read the 10th volume and it was underwhelming. And I was thinking maybe it was underwhelming because you were reading it without, well, you had the background because you've read the others, but you haven't read them all together. And so maybe that would influence me enjoying the ending more than other people. So I decided to reread 1 to 9. And because I was reading The Magic Mountain at the time, I didn't have time to read other actual physical books, so I decided to invest in mangas instead. And I read from 1 to 9, and then I read volume 10. And I have to say, I understand why people say it's underwhelming, but I really, really enjoyed the ending. So for you to understand, I will first show you all of the covers of all of the books because the art is too beautiful for me not to show you, and then I'll tell you what Happiness is about. So of course, this is volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, 4, which it looks like a child painted this with crayon and it ended up beautiful in my opinion. Number 5, number 6, 7, 8, which it's gorgeous, 9, and 10. So Happiness is basically a coming-of-age story, and Shuzo Oshimi is known by actually doing a lot of coming-of-age stories. Flowers of Evil, I do believe, is the first work of this author, and it's a coming-of-age story. I have another story of this author that I already read, which is Shino Can't Say Her Name, I believe, and it's also a coming-of-age story, but every time it's a coming-of-age story talking about puberty, sexual feelings, and it always has something difficult in between. So in Flowers of Evil, I'm not really sure what it is because I haven't read it, but I really, really want to, since this is becoming one of my favorite mangakas. I have read Shino Doesn't Know How to Say Her Name, or what it's called in English. I'm not sure because I read it in Spanish. And that one, it had a problem, which is our main character stuttered and couldn't say her name specifically, so it was a lot of trouble to actually present herself and make friends. And in Happiness case, we have vampires. Yes, you heard me correctly, we have vampires. It's a coming-of-age story with vampires. But it's not a very normal, paranormal, paraphrasing, sort of situation. So this is a very sad, complex, and lonely story. This is about this kid. He's called Makoto Okazaki. Okay, I forgot his last name. He's called Makoto Okazaki, and basically one night he's attacked by this girl and he's turned into a vampire because she asks him, do you want to be like me or do you want to die? And he chooses to live, and so he gradually starts to become a vampire. So he has trouble coming out in the sun, he has trouble in school, but all at the same time, while he was a normal human being, he was very bullied in his school, and so he starts to actually fight back with his vampire's powers without wanting to. This is sort of those manga series where you always feel sad because things could go right, but never do. Everything goes wrong, and that's exactly how you feel when you're in puberty, when you're getting through adolescence. You feel like nobody understands you and that everything is going to shit, because it normally is, but it's normally not that hard as it actually is for these characters here. So you sort of have jumped in times about situations. You have 4, 5, let's just say, main characters, and you follow some of them, then you stop following them. You have a lot of trigger warnings, but it's a beautifully done manga series, and I really recommend it to you if you like paranormal and if you like coming of age stories with a lot of issues, because basically this is what you feel like when you're coming out of your adolescence, when you're going through it. But in here, it's everything so real because our main character is turning into a vampire, and so of course everything is hard for him because he's not a normal teenager. However, that's what everyone feels like when they're going through this, and it's not very real, is it? So, it's just, you can relate. It has a lot of horrifying situations happening. It has one of the things that I have never saw in mangas or books anywhere, and I really enjoyed it, which is periods. Yes. He's a vampire, so he knows when women are bleeding, and there's periods mentioning here, which I really thought it was groundbreaking, because normally, apparently in paranormal, women never have their periods because vampires can never detect that people have their periods, which for me, I know that I'm saying period a lot, but it's sort of normal, and I really enjoy that portrayed in the book. So I don't want to give a lot of the story away, but if you like beautiful art, which you have, I'm going to show you. It's gorgeous. It's really gorgeous. If you like it, and if you want to see a coming of age story with paranormal, I would for sure recommend you, if you don't have problems with blood, gory scenes that happened, bullying, death of a loved one, and other unpleasantries that might be present. But if you really want to know more about that, just tell me something in the comments down below, and I will list you the triggers, because some of them might be spoilery and I really don't want to tell you anything about that. So I have to say, this is one of my favorite manga series, and I do want to read more by Suju Oshimi, because I really think that I'm going to love everything that this author does, since it kind of speaks to me at a level. And I know that not everything is paranormal, but this one was, and I was very fortunate to actually start with it and really enjoying it. So yeah, that's everything that I read for the month of March. I'm sorry if I look strange, but I have people in the house that are hearing me, and I cannot fully articulate when I am doing this with other people. So yeah, I hope that you guys read a lot in March. In April, currently, I am doing my owls, and I hope that you guys are too, because the magical readathon is amazing. And I will tell you of all the books that I read for the readathon at the end of April. So yeah, March is done. We are going through April. Another month. So that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys are well with the situation that is going on. If you need anything, please just tell me in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to reach out to you and to talk to you a little bit. And if you want to talk about mangas or recommendations or books even, or what you read in March, just tell me something in the comments down below. So that's going to be all for today, and happy readings to you all. Bye!